It's me. I'm back. I'm sorry if you hear people talking. We're having a snowstorm right now, so I actually don't know why they're outside. Hello everybody and welcome back to today's video. We are here to discuss, as I had promised and kind of honestly slightly regret, the Justin Baldoni versus Blake Lively. I just recently dived into Blake Lively's complaint that was filed from around Christmas time. And of course, as I was putting my finishing touches on the edit, she decided to officially sue him. I was expecting that. I just wasn't expecting it so freaking soon. Like, at least wait until January 1st, woman. And then of course, I don't know which came first, okay? But they dropped around the same time. Justin Baldoni also sued somebody. I think I made some pretty bold statements in the last video where I said I felt manipulated. I still do. And honestly, now I have a headache after going through both Blake Lively's complaint, which I'm pretty sure is very similar to her lawsuit that she officially filed, and Justin Baldoni's lawsuit, which he has now filed. Exhausting. Like, what did I get myself into? So we'll go ahead and dive into his lawsuit. His lawsuit, I think, is about 87 pages. It's a little bit longer than Blake Lively's complaint. So this lawsuit claims exactly what I thought his team would try to do. Basically take that whole idea of a smear campaign and social manipulation and apply it to Blake Lively's team. Like, you know, instead of our team doing it, it's her who's doing it. In short, this lawsuit features many examples of moments where in Blake Lively's claim, there's a lot of cherry-picked and altered text messages between Abel and Nathan, which we use that as a foundation as a lot of the proof for like the smear campaign, social manipulation, etc. Obviously, he denies the sexual harassment complaints. The lawsuit also delves into some on-set production issues where basically Lively tried to steal the project away from him from the very beginning, so we'll be getting into that. As for the promotional tour and the campaign, he claims that none of the social manipulation aspects happened. None of that. His team didn't have to do anything, that it was all a natural, that Blake Lively basically dragged her own name through the mud. Like I said, as promised, I did read through this entire thing. It took me a bit. I have emotional whiplash. With both lawsuits, they tell very different sides of a story, and both of them have very interesting proof, and both of them have very interesting ways of refuting the other side's proof. So it's very confusing, and I think some of that is on purpose. I think a lot of like Baldoni's lawyer and Lively's team muddied the water in terms of like timelines and events. It's hard to piece together an exact timeline. You know, you're given some dates, but other dates it's like, well, did that happen before this event, which wasn't given a date? Like, it's very like confusing. Hollywood PR is some of the most soulless, soul-sucking, unethical, fabricated pieces of media I have ever encountered, and it's only meant to confuse and manipulate the masses. And it is so freaking effective, let me tell you. And as I dive into this, again, reminder, as I said with the Lively complaint, that this is a very sticky situation. It's not black and white. It's very complicated. There are lots of parts of this that are probably hidden from the public eye, and it's gonna be even more hidden until the whole lawsuit thing plays out. It's gonna be like a, you know, people were pointing out Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp. It's gonna be like another situation like that, where I think the media is gonna eat up whatever happens in court. It's gonna be a spectacle, basically. I don't think we're gonna get a lot of the information that we want, or a lot of the questions, well, at least me, a lot of the questions that I had when reading both documents are probably not gonna be answered until some sort of conclusion from the lawsuits. So currently we have 3 lawsuits in effect. We have Blake Lively's lawsuit against Justin Baldoni and team. We have Jones, who is Justin Baldoni's ex-publicist, against Justin Baldoni and team. And then we have Baldoni with this lawsuit that I'm going to be breaking down, who is suing the New York Times, not Lively like I thought he was going to. However, his lawyer did say that a lawsuit is coming for Lively's ass. So we'll see when that drops. I'll break this down into different parts, again, just to kind of keep it a little bit easy. We're gonna start with like a basic introduction of what they call the truth of the matter. So Baldoni's team accuses the New York Times of not providing them the proper time to address the claims made by Blake Lively in her complaint. The writer of the article had reached out for comment and gave Baldoni's team a 14-hour window before the article was published. They did manage to send a letter, which show on screen, link below, you can read it yourself, where they denied the claims, obviously. But despite this letter being sent, the New York Times article was still published, and it was published before the deadline that they had originally gave them. So the deadline was supposed to be on noon on December 21st, and they ended up publishing it about a couple hours earlier than they said they were going to, and they kind of ignored that letter that said none of this is true. Part of the lawsuit claims that they were not provided the efficient time to respond. Baldoni's lawyer accuses the New York Times of relying on Lively's cherry-picked and altered text convos to use as proof to write their article. This lawsuit accuses the New York Times of working closely with Lively to help manipulate the narrative, which social manipulation, if you will. We learned that term last video. Specifically, they say that it's readily apparent that the Times had been quietly working in concert with Lively's team for weeks or months. The Times participated actively in the legal maneuvering at the heart of Lively's strategy. I found it funny, this last sentence here. Notably, Lively chose not to file a lawsuit against Baldoni, Wayfair, or the plaintiffs. The plaintiffs, whatever. A choice that spared her from the scrutiny of the discovery process, including answering questions under oath and producing her communications. That decision was no accident. Well, she filed now, so that theory's out the window. So Baldoni's lawyer then kind of pulls an Uno reverse card and delves into Blake Lively's true character. She's the one who orchestrated the smear campaign, not them. They also accuse the New York Times of purposefully ignoring evidence because the New York Times have stated that they reviewed thousands of texts and communications. Baldoni's team is saying, well, you would have noticed that those were altered texts within the claim, and you would have noticed that Blake Lively was actually the one who orchestrated the smear campaign. To a certain degree, I understand this and agree with it. They would have seen that some of the texts were indeed altered or missing context, whatever. They would have gotten the full scope of the context. The only thing that I don't necessarily agree with, or at least question, that the New York Times would have known that Blake Lively was the one who orchestrated it. And of course, we don't know. It depends on what thousands of communications and texts they're referring to. I'm assuming they're referring to what they got from Jones, and in that case they would have only seen what was sent between Baldoni's team. The only thing that they would get from that would be hearsay that Blake Lively is the one who's orchestrating a smear campaign. They wouldn't be privy to like communications between Blake Lively and Jones or somebody else where it actually confirms like her agreeing or her accepting a smear campaign. Like, you know what I mean? Again, we don't know exactly what information they have, but I do agree, like, they would have seen, and we'll get into some examples of like, you know, cherry-picked or altered texts, but they would have seen the full communications and they would have known that some of the stuff within Lively's claims aren't represented properly. Baldoni's lawyer actually claims that Baldoni tried to express wanting to avoid harming Lively, and here in these texts you can see Justin, they have it circled. I love when they do this. How can we say somehow that we are not doing any of this? It looks like we are trying to take her down. Melissa, Nathan, they are doing all of this themselves and it's really obvious. And then on this page here, things I'm more worried about is that we are planting these stories, which is not true, obviously. According to the lawsuit, this shows that Baldoni is trying to protect her image. I mean, some of it is also trying to protect their own image, right? Like, they don't want to look like they're the ones who are planting stuff and trying to take her down viciously. So now we're gonna go ahead and go through some of the cherry-picked and altered texts that they feature. There's tons, okay? I'm just gonna pick out, you know, some of the more important ones or some of the ones that I want to point out. You can read this lawsuit yourself, and I suggest you go do so because it is a very interesting read and it'll give you more of a fuller scope. Baldoni and his team deny any desire to bury Blake Lively with negative press, which was featured heavily in her complaint. You know, "We can bury anyone," I think was the line. And this is where the lawsuit begins to show examples of how Lively's team cherry-picked and altered some of the text convos between Nathan and Abel to make it look like they were planting pieces or being very shady at the very least. So in Lively's complaint, the texts were cropped and technically altered to make it seem like Nathan and Abel were planting pieces in the media. However, in the missing text before these lines, Nathan confirms that it wasn't her influencing the negative article. So this is what actually came before. I love that they circle it in red and they show you what's excluded. "Damn, this is unfair because it's also not me. Everything now looks like it's me. Maybe not to you." No, it totally does. No, it totally does look like his side. What? I will say another thing too, these fucking publicists, they don't know how to fucking text. And it's annoying because I don't understand half the things they're saying. It's like reading cursive. I'm like, girl, I have to reread it 5,000 times because they're not speaking in proper sentences and I can't really understand what the heck they're saying. Sorry, rant over. Okay. "Wow, you really outdid yourself with this piece. That's why you hired me, right? I'm the best." On the left side, Lively's complaint, and it shows on the right side the actual text thread. What's below it doesn't really add context, but what was above it definitely did. This looks like, you know, "Wow, you really outdid yourself with this piece. And that's why you hired me, right? I'm the best." It does make it seem like she planted some pieces, but the text before that, Nathan clearly states, "Damn, this is unfair because it's also not me. Everything now looks like it's me." It does change the context of which this is said because this does come off now more sarcastic. I completely agree that, you know, this was completely misrepresented within Lively's complaint. Another funny fact about this, and I get it, you know, the lawyers got to really go in hard on some of this stuff, but they really harp on the fact that there's a missing emoji. I will love to see a clip of the lawyer trying to argue the uses of emojis in the court of law because, girl, even I don't know sometimes. People use emojis in the craziest ways. This is a question I did have and I don't know if it holds any truth or validity, but I'm wondering if through obtaining it through subpoena, if for some reason that took out the emoji. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's true or not. That's just a question I had. So further in the lawsuit, they dive into more specific instances of where Lively's team altered some of the text messages. I think the one that I showed you was probably one of the most damning ones, but I will say that some of the other ones, adding back in the context doesn't help. It doesn't do much, like, to change the words that were said. In this one, they're showing how they sort of cherry-picked some of the comments. "We can't write it down to him. We can't write that we will destroy her, blah, 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 blah." So that was included within Blake Lively's complaint. And then he has to look at it as an information document for us to be armed with. That's all. Imagine if a document saying all the things that he wants ends up in the wrong hands. And then, you know, we can bury anyone, but I can't write that to him. I will be very tough. Those are 3 things that were included from this entire text thread. So they exclude some of the comments made back from Abel, like, "After that, of course not, but I told him that's the point of talking it through. If there's any constellation, he's like this with everything. He overthinks, stresses, high anxiety. He just needs to be educated on how the process works." It really doesn't change the words that were spoken. Like, it doesn't change the context or the tone in which this conversation happened. I will say that in a lot of like legal documents, you do kind of want to choose the most important. If they are working off of thousands of textual evidence and communication threads, they are going to have to pick out the most important that support their claim. There is a fine line that you do kind of have to toe when it comes to this, because you have to fine-tune some of the supporting evidence to your claims, but you also don't want to cherry pick evidence to paint a specific narrative that will make you look good and the other person look bad. You do want to only include the strongest evidence, and some of that means cutting out some of the non-important stuff within a conversation. However, you start getting into slimy territory when you're cutting out context that changes the words that are being spoken. Like if something is said in a sarcastic manner and you take out that context that sets up that sarcastic tone and use it as evidence to support something, that's icky. And then I'll show another example of where, again, context does matter in this case. He doesn't realize how lucky he is right now that we need press on him, the whispering in the ear, the sexual connotations. Now this one was a huge one for me because I think it kind of confirmed that definitely something happened on set. Because I'm like, if his team is even saying that, that's pretty damn bad. But what was missing from this, which changes sort of the context of this situation, well, it doesn't change the context of it, it just changes the mindset of the publicist and the crisis manager, where it says, doesn't matter if it's not true. I know, I don't think they get that. They think the truth wins. No, it doesn't. Well, we'll see in a court of law. They don't think it's true. So at the very least, that does sort of change, especially for me. It is valid if somebody's own team doesn't believe them or doesn't support them. It does change, especially for me, how I feel about that text conversation. It does feel a little, it's an example of manipulation within the law, the complaint. It's painting a certain narrative and it wants you to follow it, but it's excluding some important parts from it. And I get why they did it, you know, but that doesn't make it any less scummy. So now that we see some of that, we're gonna get into the organic backlash versus smear campaign. So the lawsuit goes on to show more textual evidence between Baldoni's team discussing the, what they call the organic nature of Lively's downfall, where during the press tour, basically they didn't have to do much. They just had to sit back and like watch her basically destroy her own career. The media just went on a freaking frenzy and were like dredging up old interview clips, just basically using her own words against her. So from Justin Baldoni, definitely don't want to plant stories and yet just want to change the narrative. I wish they would write that. I only said nice things about her and never spoke disparagingly of the cast. And so it's apparent that the feud only works one way. Now some could say that this is kind of a tactic, you know, like make it look like I'm not saying anything disparaging, but he does say like he doesn't want to place stories, which I think is my biggest thing about his team, his crisis team specifically during the promotional campaign, was the claims from Lively that his team planted false pieces. He is telling his team, in that specific instance at least, that he doesn't want to plant pieces in the media. The lawsuit then goes into explaining how Lively's whole promotional thing, you know, grab your friends, wear your florals, that whole situation, and the fact that she promoted her hair care and alcohol brand at the same time. You know, his team is like, she did that herself. Like, what do you want from us? So I completely agree. That was one complaint that I had about her too. I think everybody had that complaint about her too. This shows the tag team is kind of the name of Melissa Nathan's team. It's talking about one of those instances where she was promoting the movie, but a member says, we didn't tell Jed to go after the idea that her promo was inappropriate. That happened organically because people saw the actual movie and were like, wait, this is a movie about domestic violence that they wore florals to. Yeah, she was an idiot. She spoke that way. It's not us inflating the media. The media is just doing it themselves. There's a lot of texts between the whole team that are like that. And I want to throw this one in here because I think it's funny. Justin Baldoni texts his team. He says, this is not us, correct? Assuming the guy we brought in would never do this. And it's a TikTok from Perez Hilton, which does say Team Blake Lively ? But Melissa Nathan said none of us would ever do this. No one even pays attention to this person past 2005. He is not relevant. He does not create a news headline. He does not get pickup. He is now just a troll. If you don't know anything about Perez Hilton, let me tell you, that just summarizes him pretty well. So again, agree. A lot of the marketing that she did herself is what bit her in the ass. I think she tried to pass blame on a Sony, you know, saying that they were the ones who gave us the marketing plan and that we were contractually obligated to follow that. That was a kind of a big question mark with that complaint. It's like, but they didn't force you to say these things. They didn't force you to promote your alcohol brand alongside the movie, you know? So definitely I think a lot of this is valid. Next section we'll get into, Blake Lively's publicist does not help her case at all. Her publicist, like, I had a theory that Blake Lively's team, PR team, was not the greatest, and after reading some of these text combos between her publicist and Baldoni's team, I stand by that. So they go on to claim that Leslie Sloan, who is Lively's publicist, is the one who is kind of the real social manipulator, and that she was the one trying to plant pieces that Justin Baldoni was a sexual predator. Evidence that they provide you know, against Sloan does kind of show that, once again, she's not the greatest publicist. But it is kind of weak in supporting this claim. You'll see why. So I'll go through some examples here. This is a text thread between Leslie Sloan and James, who is, I believe, a reporter from the Daily Mail. What the fuck is going on? The whole cast doesn't like Justin, nothing to do with Blake. So, you know, in that sense, yes, she is lying. Or at least hiding the truth about, like, you know, what's actually going on. So James says, like I said, though, the reporting is that there were issues between her and Justin as well as others, and that Justin found it difficult to work with her. One of those reporters known is close with Stephanie Jones because they used to always get Tom Brady, and Steph represents him, I believe. I told them she is awful and to not rely on anything she says. I'm telling you, she's a liar. They are panicking as the whole cast hates him. So then James goes on to basically screenshot these messages and forward them to Melissa Nathan. If anything, this just shows that James from the Daily Mail cannot be trusted. So he tells her, she said the whole cast hates Justin. This has nothing to do with Blake, and now she's saying that Blake was sexually assaulted. Why wouldn't she say anything about that then? She knows she's full of shit. She told me the whole issue is that everybody hates Justin, nothing about Blake and Justin. She said it has nothing to do with Blake. BS. And to a certain degree, I get what you're saying, but like also you just went behind her back, sent these screenshots to the opposing side. Maybe she just knows that you're not trustworthy? I don't know. When it comes to something like being sexually assaulted, like it's not her story to tell. Maybe Blake Lively didn't give her the okay to say anything to a reporter about that. There's a lot of like, well, she doesn't have to tell you. The most important thing from that was that, you know, she's calling Steph Jones a liar. So does that say something about her character, who is now suing Baldoni? Honestly, all this says to me is that all of these people are horrible people, and they all don't like each other, which is another thing. It's like y'all hate each other, and yet it's giving high school drama. Okay, so in this text we see James from the Daily Mail. You can see that Leslie bashes Melissa, tries to get me to say that Melissa was planting stories in bad-mouthing Blake. Never once did she mention anything about the sexual harassment. She told me that she does not like Melissa on multiple occasions. Also, she has a history of lying. So those are things that they pointed out during this. It says you can see that Leslie bashes Melissa and tries to get me to say that Melissa was planting stories. I don't see that at all. They don't actually show that happening. So I don't know what that's referring to. This is a text thread between Melissa Nathan and TMZ. What they have circled here in red is that the People story about Justin Baldoni false, about cast and crew hating him. We are told cast and crew find Justin to be a nice guy. Don't take as harsh of sides behind scenes as it's being reported. At this point we are told that it's being milked for publicity. Justin's over it. It was really a creative difference between Blake and Justin, but wasn't nearly as bad as reported. Blake's huge ego, etc. is the reporting. If I remember correctly, it was like the cast are the ones who didn't like him, but a lot of the crew, like the people behind the scenes, like I know like some of the editors, for example, they like Justin Baldoni. So there is, you know, truth behind that. Like I don't think it was as extreme as some people said it to be, but also the entire cast did unfollow him on social media. So I don't know if there was something between some of the cast. Melissa Nathan, you know, there's some stuff that doesn't really matter. But she says, do you have sources? Blake Lively's camp keeps thinking it's us placing and we are doing F all. So this is, again, Melissa Nathan confirming that they didn't really plant pieces. But I will say that this is correspondence between her and TMZ. Like, if she was planting pieces, she's obviously not going to be telling a reporter that. These next text threads show that, like, Leslie Sloan was not the greatest publicist in the world. So this one you can see Leslie Sloan again talking to James. She says, I know you're friends with Melissa, and he says, yes, we are. I'm not paid to take people down. I'm honest. Girl, try harder. Like, she hasn't done anything. Literally anti-Blake. KK. I don't know if she's supposed to be running defense or like what she's trying to do, or if she's just like trying to have a casual conversation. She told me the same thing she told you, which is that she said that Blake's backlash is organic. And Leslie said, it's not. She did nothing. Again, it's so weak. But help get a movie make tons of money. Justin make tons. And she was kind of off promoting it as if it was Barbie. Yeah, like, what the heck? And here's more from Leslie Sloan. She messaged and said, your story is mean. I guess you and Melissa are in cahoots. And whoever this was, it doesn't say who it is. Hi, I reached out to you on Thursday via text to let you know that our reporter Lillian had sent some quotes and was asked to write it. Included what they were. I ended up calling out on Friday, so I can paint, blah, blah, blah. And I do talk to Melissa, but she is in no way giving me any anti-Blake info. This might be James again, I don't know. Blake's backlash is due to her own words and actions in interviews. The only thing she told me is that she told you and that's all organic. And then Leslie says, yes, mean, your quotes are kind and true. What? Tired of the bullying she hate. PP. What? Leslie, girly, come on, what is this? Well, first she said, yes, mean, but then she says, your quotes are kind and true. Like, which is it? I don't get it. Who are you talking about? What's going on here? I'm so confused. It was getting so bad for him, he had to hire Melissa. But then after that one interview where she said, her GPS/cell phone thing, it's obvious she was kidding, but it was snowballed and it kept going and going. Huh? I don't know what that's referring to. It will all turn around, and you know how to flip the script better than anyone. Please make it turn around. I know you are friends with Melissa. Oh my gosh, this girl. Now I will say Blake Lively's team, Leslie Sloan, girl, what the hell are you doing? If anything, it shows how incompetent she is. I don't think she can plant pieces. I think she is incapable of doing so. Just based off of, okay, I shouldn't be so mean, but just based off of this, when it comes to like Nathan confirming that they didn't, you know, plant evidence or that all of this is happening organically when she's talking to her team, that I think is more important and holds more validity to her claims, because why would she need to lie to her own team, right? Like, she would need to tell her team what the next steps are, what the process is, what scenario planning they need to do, you know. So just throwing that out there. If anything, it just makes Sloan look like doo-doo. So next, they briefly touch on Jones, who is the ex-publicist of Baldoni that's also currently suing him. So they accuse her of betraying Baldoni's team by aligning herself with Lively to gain personal favor and opportunities. There's not a lot of evidence within this to support that claim. I'm assuming we'll find out more because she is also suing Baldoni. So again, the process of discovery will probably reveal a little bit more about the situation. I haven't read her lawsuit yet. I really need to get into it, but I do know there's a lot of juicy things in there as well. I know there's some text threads between Nathan and Abel that showed that they don't like Baldoni. So we'll see. So here we'll start getting into the lawyers refuting some of Lively's complaints. So he begins to refute some of the sexual harassment claims. So this complaint revolves around an instance where Blake Lively was shown a at-home pregnancy video by Heath. According to Lively, to add insult to injury, Mr. Heath approached Miss Lively and her assistant on set and started playing a video of a fully nude woman with her legs spread apart. Miss Lively thought he was showing her pornography and stopped him. Mr. Heath explained that the video was his wife giving birth. Miss Lively was alarmed and asked Mr. Heath if his wife knew he was sharing the video, to which he replied, "She isn't weird about this stuff." Now, according to this lawsuit, Lively had labeled it as pornography in the complaint. The Times compounded its journalistic failures by uncritically advancing Lively's unsubstantiated claims of sexual harassment against Heath and Baldoni. For example, the article based on Lively's CRD complaint sensationally alleges that Mr. Heath had shown Lively a video of his naked wife, with Lively's CRD complaint even labeling the footage as pornography. This claim is patently absurd. The video in question was a non-pornographic recording of Heath's wife and baby during a home birth, a deeply personal one with no sexual or overtone. To distort this benign event into an act of sexual misconduct is outrageous and emblematic of the lengths to which Lively and her collaborators are willing to go to defame the plaintiffs. Now, she did not call it pornography in her complaint. What she said was, when he showed me a video of a naked woman with her legs spread open, she thought it was pornography, but then he went on to explain that it was an at-home pregnancy video of his wife. Are we stripping something of context? Because she didn't outright call it pornography here. And they show a screen grab of that video, which, depending on where in the video, if she's not holding a baby, titties are out, legs are open. Let's put this into perspective. My boss shows me that. We may have been talking about a birthing scene or whatever, and then he comes up and shows me a very personal video of his wife naked giving birth, I'm gonna be alarmed. Both of them don't claim that she asked to be shown that. Both of them claim that he just showed her that. Even if his wife condoned it, and even if it was part of a creative discussion, you're still wildly crossing boundaries between a CEO of a production company and your main actress in the film. That's traumatizing to some people. I do not want to see somebody giving birth to a baby. That scares me. That would honestly, I know I'm projecting here, but that would kind of traumatize me. I don't care if we were talking about a birthing scene beforehand. Just my opinion, I guess. So that I found kind of interesting, that the lawyer misrepresented what Lively said in her complaint. Another claim that from Lively's complaint that they addressed is that both Baldoni and Heath would repeatedly enter her makeup trailer uninvited. They refute this claim by showing a text between Lively and Baldoni where she invited him over to work out lines while pumping. I will point out that the claim does say that both men had repeatedly walked into her trailer. This text is just one instance of her inviting him over. And I will say this, consent can be revoked at any time. It is enough to plant doubt in her story, yes, but we don't know exactly the timeline. It could have been a situation where she was completely okay with it at all times. It could have been a situation where she at first was okay with it, but then started getting creeped out by them and then revoked consent. We don't know. But I will say that this one text, it is enough to plant doubt, but her claim is that it happened many times and with both men. Another claim that Baldoni's liar goes on to refute is the sexy comments. They show text where Lively comments on a fashion choice for a character as being more sexier. So I really don't want to be on defense for Blake Lively, but they use this as a text to show that Lively is the one who set the tone for Baldoni to match when it comes to creative input of their characters' fashion choices. If she's calling her character sexy, that means that he should be allowed to use those same words to make choices on her character's wardrobe. And you also need to keep in mind that he is the director. Like, he isn't just a co-star, he is also the director, where he does need to make these calls. He was just matching her input, but she used that against him within the complaint, saying that she felt ogled and violated. There is a difference between calling a character sexy and calling your co-worker sexy. But I will say in her complaint, it does say that this has happened multiple times. She does mention that there are other people on set who complained about being sexually harassed by Justin Baldoni. It's very muddied in terms of we don't have the technical proof that he did call other people sexy because nobody has come forward necessarily. But it's going to get even more complicated with all the lawsuits. I don't know why she would lie about that, but there's also no proof. But we also probably won't know of any proof until the whole legal process happens. I will say that this next piece of evidence is probably the most damning against Blake Lively's complaints, which is a big feature in her complaint was the lack of an intimacy coordinator. So the claim that Baldoni had only ever acted in the interest of creative discussions for their characters and under the direction of an intimacy coordinator. So you'll see here with Justin Baldoni, so it says, just hired an intimacy coordinator who I love. We'll set you up to meet / I'm guessing that's FaceTime with her next week for intro. And Blake Lively says, I feel good. I can meet her when we start. Thank you though. And so then Baldoni sent that to his producer and says, just FYI, I just wanted to tell you about this. Seems like she doesn't want to meet intimacy coordinator until we start, which may mess up the workflow, but I can still meet with her, of course. And the producer says that's fine if she doesn't want to meet her now. You just have to walk her through what you and the intimacy coordinator are thinking. They purposefully excluded the fact that, you know, that at one point Blake Lively failed to meet with a intimacy coordinator that Baldoni had hired. This is where kind of the timeline, I wish they would have clarified a little bit more. I believe that he hired the intimacy coordinator in the beginning of production. So that already makes Lively's claims not 100% factual. Is there a possibility that there were meetings where an intimacy coordinator wasn't invited throughout the entire production? Possibly. I don't know what each party is referring to, but in this case, with the evidence that he is providing, it is very damning against Blake Lively that she lied in her complaint. An intimacy coordinator, if you're able to lie about that, then it brings into question what else are you able to lie about. Now, again, this is about to get really messy, so I'm just reacting to the evidence that is presented in this document and the fact that it doesn't look good, right? Blake Lively could refute this, or Justin Baldoni can come with more receipts. So now we're gonna get into what they call like her hostile takeover. They go in to expose Lively's hostile takeover of the film, which we were kind of privy to during the promotional campaign. She had her own cut of the film, that there was two separate cuts. You had Baldoni and you had Lively's cut. And at the time, everybody was like, what do you, like, Baldoni's the director? What's going on? Why is Lively able to get her own cut of the movie? This shows text between Baldoni and his editors about this. According to the lawsuit, however, this takeover occurred well before the editing room or the promotional campaign. So we'll break this down a little bit. This is during filming. One of the areas of focus further in the lawsuit had to deal with the wardrobe situation, which led to one of the claims featured in Lively's complaint. Lively overstepped boundaries when it came to the wardrobe of her character. This included sidelining the costume designer hired for the film, sending images of inspiration to the costume designer, spending her own money on clothes for the character, and according to the lawsuit, exceeding the allocated budget to reshop the wardrobe. So on the first day of principal photography, paparazzi captured photos of Lively and Baldoni. I don't know if you remember that, but the internet went feral on them. They were calling Blake Lively too old for the role, that her wardrobe was kind of frumpy and ugly. Apparently Sony caught wind of this and decided to blame Baldoni because it's his pet project. He is the one who's producing, directing. This is where we kind of get two different versions of events happening. In Lively's version, Baldoni went into her trailer, had an outburst about this, and forced cast and crew to wait hours while he cried, and she had to reassure him. In his version of events, however, he admits to tearing up, but only because Lively complimented him on his great work as an actor and director, which they now claim was a manipulation tactic. So it's very much so a he said, she said situation. These type of situations are going to be tough to prove which side is telling the truth. It's kind of really up to public perception. I'm not going to say one way or the other. I don't know what to think because it is a he said, she said. I think once, the lawsuits play out in the court of law, we'll learn more about people's personalities and character. I'm very, very curious to hear testimonies from other people other than Baldoni and Lively. I want to hear from the cast. I want to hear from the crew. Another aspect of this was that Lively had rewritten the script, a very famous line from her during the promotional campaign where she gave credit to Ryan Reynolds for helping writing a scene in which even the screenwriter was like, this is news to me. So apparently Lively was known for altering the script daily. I would like to hear from the scriptwriter because she would probably know, what was rewritten and like, oh, that's not my line. I don't know. I would like to hear from her too. So speaking of Ryan Reynolds, let me get back to him because apparently he berated Baldoni at their penthouse over the weight shaming comments. Somebody had pointed out, and I do agree, like out of all the things that Ryan Reynolds can come at him for, the sexual harassment complaints, all that, he comes at Baldoni for the weight shaming. That's kind of telling there. So this is an instance that they kind of use to showcase her manipulation strategies. Sorry, if you're hearing something, it's the snow plow outside. We got a lot of snow. To run the show during production, going as far as to threaten quitting and threatening to tell the world of the fat comments to destroy Baldoni's reputation. So the next section is the protection letter. So this is kind of where they put their tinfoil hats on. Basically, they say that this protection letter, the one that was shown in Lively's complaint as Exhibit A, the protections to return to production, which was a list of 17 conditions that had to be agreed on by all parties in order to continue filming. They claim that it was a document that they were coerced into signing if they wanted to continue filming. So this is her manipulating them, using her power and influence to get them to sign this document. From the very beginning, Lively was keeping tabs of all these things that both Baldoni and Heath were saying and doing on set so that she could use it to her advantage later on, which she, drafted up these protections to return to productions. Lively established what language is acceptable to her and what is not at the very onset of the relationship, just 2 days into filming. To use this language herself, then in turn, make a note of each instance assistants where her director used the same language, which again, they're claiming that from the very beginning, she was keeping track of every sort of like questionable thing Baldoni said or he did, using all of this to generate a list of demands that insinuate he and his business partner acted inappropriately and refused to work unless they agreed to not do it again, is calculating and even extortionistic. But to then use Wayfair, Baldoni, and Heath's agreement to not do something they already did not do, were not doing, and had no intention of doing as the basis to file a non-public CRD complaint against them and release it to the public herself in order to ruin their reputations is defamation. The Times was directly complicit in this. So what they're saying is from the very beginning, she was keeping track of all of the questionable things, almost setting them up. You know, she was setting the tone. She was using the word sexy. And then every time that they would match her tone or say something that could be considered an HR violation, she took note of. And then she lucked out with the writer's strike, and then she was able to draft the letter. And then in order to continue production, she used the letter as leverage, which coerced them into signing the letter, which is now a legal document that can be used against them, which is what she uses to manipulate them further on throughout the timeline of events. It is very calculated, if true. I will have to say that to cover my ass. This is what they are claiming. I will find out if it's true or not. How do you even have the forethought to do that? You know what I mean? She couldn't have liked the movie that much, could she? If it was her passion project, why she would do something like this, but it's not. It's just a project. I don't know the ulterior motives of like why she would go to this length from the very beginning. So post-production and, you know, post everything happening in the public eye, that this is why she released this non-public complaint to the New York Times to be published so that she could ruin Baldoni's and Wayfair's public image. So this has so many layers. They go on to explain that the meeting that occurred on January 4th to discuss the complaints once again happens very differently in her complaint versus this lawsuit. According to Baldoni, the meeting was less of a meeting and more of a sting operation where Ryan Reynolds ended up yelling at him for mistreating Lively. They even mention that the Sony representative that was there was shocked about, you know, the words that were exchanged. And again, I can't wait to hear from them in court. Same with like Lively's complaint. Why would they lie about this? You know, if they mention the fact that there was a Sony representative there and they were willing to add that into this lawsuit, I highly doubt it's a lie. I think that something definitely happened during that meeting that was probably really heated. And they actually go on to explain that the list of 30 complaints that we've seen at the beginning was misrepresented as it wasn't an actual document. So I will say that in her complaint, it did make it seem like it was a document that they all signed and agreed on during that meeting, but it wasn't, according to them. But in Lively's complaint, it says that they did. So it's, again, one side says one thing, another side says another. However, during this meeting, there were other parties present that aren't, you know, attached really to either side or are highly invested in both sides. You know what I mean? Like it isn't like Lively's camp versus Baldoni's camp where obviously they're going to say what's in the best interest for themselves and obviously have bias within, you know, whatever supports their claims. There was third parties there. It'll be interesting to hear from to help clear some of this up because two very different versions of the story. And then they get into the fact that Lively took over the editing process, which we kind of knew about, like even during the time, like I said, the public were privy on this information. I forgot this actually happened, but even at the time, it was like, is she like legally allowed to do that? As a director, Baldoni is granted a certain amount of time to create and edit. But it says here that Lively infringed upon this right and requested to join Baldoni in the editing bay. It kind of confirms my suspicion of why Lively seemed to be getting her way with hardly any pushback. So basically they're claiming that she was leveraging the protections to return to production right document and the sexual harassment claims to get her way. So in response, Wayfair flew Baldoni's editor to New York to assist Lively in the process. Eventually, Lively fired the editor, replacing them with her own choice editor, often used by Reynolds. She also fired the film's award-winning composer, replacing him with composers from Reynolds' recent project. Against repeated objections, Lively created her own cut of the film at Wayfair's and Sony's expense. Sony later informed Wayfair that Lively would not promote the film unless her demands were met. So it kind of shows the extreme lengths that she went to refine her own movie. It got to the point where it was like basically Blake Lively's version versus Justin Baldoni's version. And according to the lawsuit, Lively requested that Sony/Wayfair hold an audience test screening to see which version scored better, and that she would agree to whichever one scored higher. His, of course, scored higher, and she was like, no, I'm not doing that. So she actually got Colleen Hoover to back her on this, which she sold the rights to Justin Baldoni, so I don't know why her word means anything, but apparently it did. So she got Colleen Hoover on her side. The thing is, it's just there's so many people that are backing Blake Lively that it's kind of like, I understand Hollywood power and everything. The power, the money, the fame. Everything like that can influence people, but there's just so many people. I know there are people on Baldoni's side, like there's some editors that they show in here. It's just like, why is there so many people on her side if absolutely none of this is true? Like, I don't know. Page 34, paragraph 27 shows messages between Baldoni and editors where he was uninvited from an event where they were to showcase Lively's cut of the movie. And I totally agree in this part that this is like, and I'm not even part of the industry, but this seems absurdly against industry standards. There are many more text examples where basically Baldoni and his team just kind of let her walk all over them, basically just to get the damn film out. Like, it's like, we spent all this money already, we already worked so hard on this project, let's just get the fucking thing out. Let her do her thing. At the very least, he was passionate, Baldoni was passionate about this project and did want to get it out. So another aspect that was missing from Lively's complaint, and the article had to do with Lively wanting a producer credit, to the point where Heath sent a letter to the Producers Guild to request a PGA mark for her. So it has now come out from Heath that he was basically trapped into doing so, as Blake had extorted Wayfair Studios and continued to hold threats over their heads to exert her control. Again, I just want to know like what those threats are. You know what I mean? Like, is it like the sexual harassment complaints? Whether or not they're true? Is it Sony and her having connections within Sony? Is it Blake's overall influence within Hollywood? What exactly did she use to extort them? So Baldoni's lawyer provides many instances where both Lively and Reynolds use their leverage in the industry to basically outcast Baldoni. For example, Ryan Reynolds apparently demanded that Baldoni's agent drop him, and we heard about this, WME did. Baldoni later received word that during a premiere of his movie Deadpool and Wolverine, Reynolds approached Baldoni's agent at WME and demanded that the agent drop Baldoni. The wielding of power and influence became undeniable. Baldoni and Wayfair grew increasingly fearful of what Lively and Reynolds were capable of, as their actions seemed aimed at destroying Baldoni's career and personal life. I will say that Ryan Reynolds' demand for Baldoni's agent to drop him was refuted. WME actually released a statement, I'll link it down below, via THR, that they denied that this ever happened. Not to say that Baldoni didn't hear rumors of this. He probably did hear rumors of this, but they're saying that this is not true. Some could argue that they're just lying, but then you can take that argument and apply it to literally anything else. So I don't know. They're on the record saying that I don't know who to believe. Hollywood is making me anxious. I'm never doing this again. So now we get into the promotional campaign tactics, which again, this is diabolical. So during the promotional campaign, Baldoni was sidelined when it came to deciding the marketing tactics used. Baldoni had wanted to market the movie as a survivor story, which he did eventually, but the lawsuit claims that Lively limited his input and was the one who was steering the market in the direction of the whole girls' night out rom-com type movie. One party that I'm definitely curious to hear about is Sony, because this aspect is told in two different ways. This is coming out from Baldoni saying that Blake was the one who was influencing the marketing, which to a certain degree she was influencing her own marketing, right? She was marketing her own brands. But I think what he's saying is that like Lively was actually the one who authorized that plan to happen, right? She's claiming that she was contractually obligated to follow that marketing plan. That can easily be proved or disproved. So if she signed a contract with Sony, I would love to see that, because that could easily clear up some things in the situation. But if we never do see a contract, or if we hear from Sony that that's not true, then we know for a fact that she was the one who drove this campaign. The lawsuit then goes on to show how Baldoni and his team were treated poorly during the promotional campaign. This I do feel really bad for. But during the film's premiere, Baldoni and his team were originally barred from attending, but due to pressure, Lively allowed them to attend, but under humiliating conditions. So they claimed that they were segregated from the rest of the cast, held in a basement when Lively arrived and when she left, and excluded from an after party. So this is communications between Abel and Baldoni. She says, but nothing we can't get through together. The film will be successful. She's already promoted heavily, so if she backs away now, it'll make her look worse. And you just focus on the bigger picture of how this film is going to change the game for you and the studio. Just find ways to keep me busy while she gets everyone together. Obviously, if the whole cast is making content together, that's her trying to clue people in onto there being a bigger issue. Everything she does is calculated, yet also manic. Attempting to rewrite history, and like, I'm not the one who developed this and spent 5 years trying to make it, and like, there's an issue with me. It's just mean and hurtful, and she knows exactly what she's doing. It does show like he was kind of outcasted from the rest of the cast, and I mean, I can see where, you know, the whole cast making content together is a strategic move on her part. So they wish to hold the New York Times accountable for their horrible reporting and aiding in Lively's defamation campaign. He also goes on to say that the New York Times wasn't the only bad actor, which is kind of funny. I'll give him that. And that they will sue more. I assume he's talking about Blake Lively here, and I don't know if he's going to sue others, but you know. So the cherry on top is that image at the end of the page with the 2 death threats that they received, which, you know, how does that have to do with the New York Times? How does that have to do with the New York Times? Also, I've received worse death threats for shitting on Star Wars, I'm just saying. So in summary, they are suing the New York Times of libel due to publishing false claims, false light invasion of privacy, as they portrayed Baldoni and his team as creeps and social manipulators, promissory fraud for not providing Baldoni's team proper time to refute evidence, right? They only offered 14 hours for response. Baldoni's team was given a very short time frame. I mean, they did submit a short response denying the claims, but New York Times didn't actually look into this, and they just instead went ahead and published anyways. And then finally, breach of implied in fact contract, when the New York Times published the article earlier than what they had told Baldoni's team. So that pretty much is all I want to go through, and all I should go through, because Lord have mercy, this is going to be a long ass video for me to edit. Do I take back some of the things I said in my Lively video? Yeah. Okay, yeah. I was reacting to what I was given to at the time. Did I say, you know, Baldoni's team made us dance like little puppets and we were all idiots for believing everything his team said? Now it's reverse, and now it's possibly Lively's team that's doing all the bad things and manipulating us. I don't know anymore, okay? It's all just messy, and I don't like it, and I'm scared. Again, it is a lawsuit that is written to support Baldoni. Do I understand the argument that they could have also cherry-picked textual evidence and maybe even alter text themselves to fit their narrative? Yes, the same arguments can be made on their lawsuit as we did with Blake Lively's. But there's also a lot of things in there that Lively built a false narrative around altered text. It's gonna be very messy, is all I'm gonna say, because there's a lot of layers, there's a lot of questions, things just don't add up in either story, really. I'm not gonna choose like sides or anything, because I really think both sides are manipulative. I personally think that Blake Lively and her team suck ass. Her lawyer is a little bit better spoken than I think Baldoni's lawyer is. I'm going to refrain from ever saying anything as being total proof. I can only react to what is given to me at the time, and I will say based on both. And I haven't delved into Jones's lawsuit yet, but apparently there is some evidence in there. I don't know. And now you can kind of imply that maybe there's some altered evidence in that too. But now that Lively has filed an official lawsuit, she's going to be open to discovery, so I don't see why she would lie about certain things. If she does use certain signed documents as proof, and Baldoni's team is trying to say that those signed documents were done under coercion, I don't know if we'll ever get the truth. I'm like thinking about all these like scenarios that could play out where I don't think we'll ever get the truth. Here's my opinion, okay, so far with the evidence that I am given. I don't think absolutely nothing happened on set. I think there are too many instances of definitely questionable behavior, especially from Heath. There's certain things that aren't addressed that involve other people other than just Lively, so I would love to hear more from them. I don't feel comfortable saying that Lively is 100% lying about everything. You know what I mean? Like, I do agree that she's definitely manipulating a certain narrative and she's using pieces of evidence out of context to paint that narrative. Because like, even if there are testimonies, I know what people are going to say. I know people are going to be like, oh, she's a Hollywood elitist, she can influence people. Yeah, but I mean, I would hope people would tell the truth. I mean, they're testifying, and I don't know why Baldoni would lie either. I don't know why, other than to protect his image, and the same could be said about Lively, to protect her image. The smear, definitely like the promotional thing. The smear campaign, and I fell for it, you guys. I fucking fell for it. I'll admit it, I fell for it. Am I gullible? Yeah, a little bit. I want to be very careful with how I say this. If it turns out to be true that Blake Lively is a fucking liar and used the claims of sexual harassment as a shield when it wasn't true at all, I do hope there's some legal repercussions. I'll be very curious to see the actual lawsuit against Blake Lively and see if there's any changes really between this lawsuit against the New York Times and Blake Lively, and if they can provide any more proof. I really want to see testimony from other people. I think that would definitely help. I want to see a clear timeline. That would also help as well. Alrighty, I think that's gonna be it for today's video. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. I would like to hear your opinion down below. What do you think? Alrighty, I will see you guys on the next one. So goodbye, have a nice life, and don't believe everything you see on media.